Good evening and welcome to the April 2022 Smyrna Board of Zoning Appeals. This time I'll call the meeting to order and we'll ask for prayer and pledge. Troy, will you lead us in prayer, please?
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to lead our community, and we thank you for the leadership of our community. We ask that you would give us discernment and lead us as we follow in that responsibility. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, fellas. Phil, appreciate that. At this time, next item on our agenda is citizen comments. Any, Mitch?
None at this time.
No comments at this time. Item number 4 on our agenda will be the approval of our minutes from our March 17th meeting. Those minutes are in your packet. Hopefully you've had time to review them. If there are any additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the meeting minutes and I move for their approval.
I have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes have been approved. Number 5 is that annual event that we get to do, the election of officers. I will turn that over to Eric for his direction.
Okay, so as everyone knows, we have to elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson. So at first, I would call for any nominations for chairperson.
I'll make a nomination for Steve Sullivan.
All right, we have Steve Sullivan for chairperson. Is there any other nominations? All in favor of Steve Sullivan as chairperson, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Steve, you got it back.
Thanks, sir. Congratulations.
So the next, we would do nominations for vice chairperson. Is there any nominations for vice chairperson?
I'll make a nomination for Phil.
We have a nomination for Phil Wilson as vice chairperson. Is there any other nominations? All those in favor of Phil Wilson being the vice chairperson signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Phil, congratulations.
Excellent. I don't know if the fact that there's the same board that we've had for a while is a sign that we're doing a good job or that no one else wants this job, but either way, we'll keep doing it. So, thank you, fellas. We'll move to our new business for tonight. We have several special exceptions and a zoning variance. We'll start with the special exceptions. Brandon Bingham, I think, is first. Mitch?
Yeah, this is a special exception to allow a microbrewery at 1404 Hazelwood Drive. The property there is zone C2 and is approximately 7.79 acres in size. The applicants request an open brewery, which would include the production and sale of craft beer. All federal, state licensing and permits would be required to be obtained by the applicant if the approval is granted by the board. Operations on site would include production and a tasting room. The applicant states that deliveries would be minimal, no more than once per week. Hours of operation have not been finalized at this time, but the applicant anticipates normal restaurant hours compared to a bar style, which would have later hours into the night. And the applicant does plan on being open during lunch hours as well. Section 7.060B of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for authorizing special exceptions, and they are detailed below. Section 7.060 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for variance request. Those requirements and staff findings are as follows. B, general requirements, a conditional use permit shall be provided the board find that it is A, so designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. Staff finds that the proposed business of a brewery should not negatively affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Will not adversely affect other property in the area in which it is located. Staff finds that the proposed use should not adversely affect other properties in the surrounding area. Is within provisions of special exception as set forth in the ordinance. The use of a microbrewery is listed as a special exception within the C2 district and conforms to all applicable provisions of the ordinance for the district in which it is to be located, as well as provisions cited in section 7.060 and 7.061. Staff finds that the site may be able to conform to all provisions of the municipal zoning ordinance as listed in criteria section 7.060C. Criteria for review: prior to the issuance of a special exception, the board shall make written findings certifying compliance with the specific rules governing individual special exceptions, and that satisfactory provisions and arrangement have been made concerning all of the following where applicable. Ingress and egress to the property. Access to the site would utilize an existing access points off of Hazelwood Drive and Old Nashville Highway. Off-street parking. Staff finds that the lot would provide sufficient space for off-street parking. Refuse and service areas. Refuse collection would proceed in the same manner as it is currently. Utilities. This location does have all the necessary utilities present on site. Screening and buffering, not applicable in this instance. Signs, if any, and proposed exterior lighting with reference to glare, traffic, safety, economic effect, and compatibility and harmony with properties in the district. Any proposed signage by the applicant would need to meet the sign ordinance. Required yard and open space. Staff finds the property has sufficient space for the operation of a brewery as it is currently would be an existing commercial complex. General compatibility with adjacent properties. Staff finds that the use would be compatible with adjacent properties that as there are other retail uses in other suites adjoining the applicant's suite. Number 9 is not applicable in this instance. 7.061.17, which are special conditions for microbreweries, microwineries, and microdistilleries. No outdoor storage is allowed. The applicant states that there would be no outdoor storage for their business. If additional storage would be needed, an off-site storage unit would be utilized for dry goods. Maximum building square footage is 4,000 square feet. The leased space at 1404 Hazelwood Drive is about a little under 2,000 square feet, so that condition can be met. Off-street loading and unloading zone must be provided. The applicant states that behind the building, there is an unloading zone that would be utilized. The door must remain closed for any street-facing loading bay except when actively in use, and this loading zone is located behind the building, so it would not be an issue. Fencing, screening, and landscaping shall be provided as appropriate to protect the surrounding area. Should be no additional screening requirement for this property. An off-street parking requirement of the ordinance shall apply. The site is part of a commercial complex with adequate parking already provided. Conclusion, that staff finds that the property provides sufficient space for the business of a brewery. The site is an existing commercial complex with sufficient parking, access points, and off-street loading and unloading zones. This is the tenant's site they're looking at going in, just right here. And then just overall greater view, looking at the overall site, pointing to that lower colored section is where that brewery will be located on the site. That's all I got for you.
Excellent, thank you, sir. So for the board, I think this is our first look at one of these. A few months ago, the town council took up on their agenda considering and looking at microbreweries. We had not had specific requests come in, but we'd had several inquiries and realized that there was really not a mechanism in our current ordinances on how to deal with it. So this special exception was created, and tonight we get to do the first one. So Mitch did a good job of laying out what the general and specific requirements are for these. As you can see, they're very similar to many of our other special exceptions, making sure that ingress, egress, traffic, refuse, the facilities can support it, as well as the location and the fit of the community. So that just kind of want to give you that background since we had not seen these before. You'll know why these are coming. I think there's 2 on the agenda tonight, so you'll see 2 tonight, and this is our first 2. Mitch, I'm assuming before anyone asks, and it says at the top in the very first paragraph that they would still have to get state licensing and permits. I assume they would still have to go through our beer board for a beer license from a
Yeah,
sales perspective.
all the applicable
Right.
boards,
So this
yes.
doesn't negate any of that process. This just allows them to have the microbrewery in the specific zone. Okay, any questions or anything before we get into the review here for Mitch or for Eric?
We don't, if we make a motion to approve, do we need to go through the special conditions, or is that understood?
Do you have any additional that aren't listed?
No. So we're good.
No, then we should be able to you should be able to make a motion, based on staff's
Findings.
recommendations or findings, if you don't have anything you want to add, right? we do still need to do a public hearing, so at this time, I will close the Board of Zoning Appeals and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. If you would, just please step to the microphone, give me your name and address for the record.
Hi, thanks for having me. Brandon Bigman, 1112 North Spring Street, Murfreesboro. This is my project, obviously, and yeah, I'm here if you have any questions, but I'm obviously in favor.
Excellent. Do you do this anywhere else? Is this your first?
So I work at Yazoo Brewing Company up in Nashville. I've been there about 8 years, and a little bit of experience in some other breweries before that, but kind of been working on this project for a few years now with my wife, looking for the right spot in Rutherford County, and we had emailed Kevin Rigsby maybe 6 months ago, and the response from him and just sort of the way it was all laid out was a really well put together way of saying, hey, here's the rules, here's what you got to do. So yeah, but yeah, this would be my first time to open one.
Oh, excellent. So, like I mentioned, this is our first time too, so
You're doing great.
we'll get through it, but I appreciate you bringing it forward.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, we've seen these popping up all over Middle Tennessee. I'm familiar with Yazoo and Nashville and a few others there. Maybe not that many more, but a couple of others. But anyway, I'm excited to see these come into town, and I appreciate you looking and considering Smyrna and choosing Smyrna. So,
Absolutely.
any questions for Brandon? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak for or against? Not seeing anyone, we will close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals for discussion and motions.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like the special exception, everything seems to be in order. And staff comments didn't say anything about it not fitting use, so I see that everything here looks positive. Anybody else?
I agree.
Is that a motion or is that just a statement?
That's just my statement at the moment.
I was trying to figure out
He
there.
didn't want to put too much on his
I am
lips.
just saying it seems like it's in order, and yeah, looks good.
I will make a motion to approve based on staff findings
All right.
and comments.
We have a motion to approve the request for microbrewery in this case. Is there a second?
I will second that.
We have a second from Phil. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The special exception's approved. Thank you, Brandon. We'll move on to the next new business item on our agenda. Another, I believe, let me get back there. It's the only bad thing about agenda quick. Michael Matson, Illusion Meads. I'm
This
assuming
is,
that's a similar request.
This is the second one that you're talking about. Very, very similar request, just a couple minor tweaks to this one. The applicant's requesting a special exception to open up a micro winery at 1402 Hazelwood Drive. Once again, property zone C2, just under 8 acres in size. The applicant is requesting to open a meadery, which would include the production and sale of mead. A little backstory on this. Mead is similar to wine in that the wine process includes fermentation of grapes, but mead is fermented honey. Basically is the only difference. So based on that, the TBB, Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, and the TABC, the Tennessee Beverage Commission, consider mead as the same classification and rules and taxation as a wine product. So just a little bit difference, but more or less the same. All federal and state licensing and permits would be required to be obtained by the applicant if approval is granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Operation on site would include production in a tasting room. Sales would consist of buy the drink, on-premise, to-go sales, sales to local bars, tap houses, restaurants, as well as online sales. Applicant states that deliveries would be minimal and occur a few times per month on average. Section 7.060B of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for authorizing special exceptions, and they are detailed as follows. A conditional use permit shall be provided the board find that it is designed, located, and proposed to be operated so the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. Staff finds that the proposed business of a meadery should not have any of the above effects. Will not adversely affect other property in the area which is to be located. Staff finds the proposed use should not adversely affect other properties in the surrounding area. Is it within provisions of special exceptions as set forth in the ordinance? Use of a micro winery is listed as a special exception within the C2 district. conforms to all applicable provisions of this ordinance for the district in which it is to be located, as well as provisions cited in section 7.060 and 7.061, and is necessary for the public convenience and location planned. Staff finds the site may be able to conform to all provisions of municipal zoning ordinance as listed in criteria review section 7.060C. Prior to the issuance of a special exception, the board shall make written findings certifying compliance with the specific rules governing individual special exceptions and the satisfactory provisions and arrangement has been made concerning the following where applicable. Ingress and egress to the property. Once again, the access to the site will utilize Hazelwood and Old Nashville Highway. Off-street parking. Staff finds the lot would provide sufficient space for off-street parking. Refuse and service areas. Refuse collection would continue in the same manner as currently. Utilities. The location has all the necessary utilities present on site. Screening and buffering would not be applicable in this instance. Signs. Any proposed signage would have to meet the sign ordinance requirements. Required yard and other open space. Staff finds that the property has sufficient space for the operation of a meadery as an existing commercial complex. General compatibility with adjacent properties. Staff finds that the use would be compatible with adjacent properties as there are other retail uses in other suites adjoining the applicant's suite. Number 9 is not applicable in this instance. 7.061.17 special conditions for microbreweries, microwineries, and microdistilleries. No outside storage is allowed. The applicant has stated that there will be no outside storage for their business. Maximum building square footage for each use is 4,000 square feet. The lease space at 1402 Hazelwood is anywhere between 1,900 and 2,000 square feet in size, meeting that requirement. Off-street loading and unloading zone. The loading and unloading zone for this business will be located behind the building. The door must remain closed for any street-facing loading bay. The loading zone is behind the building, so this would not be an issue. Fencing, screening, and landscaping shall be provided as appropriate to protect the surrounding area. No additional screening would be required for the proposed use at this location, and off-street parking requirements of this ordinance shall apply. The site is part of a commercial complex with adequate parking already provided. Conclusion, staff finds that the property provides sufficient space for the business of a meadery. The site is an existing commercial complex with sufficient parking, access points, and off-street loading and unloading zones. So the business we looked at previously, sitting right here, and then the meadery would be located next door to it, an adjoining suite. And just north of it would be the meadery. That's all I got for you.
Excellent, thank you. So it looks like, based on this request compared to the last request, all of the physical aspects are exactly the same. Obviously, we're in the same building. Same parking, ingress, egress, all of those things are still the same. So, any questions or comments for Mitch before I open a public hearing? All right, seeing none, we'll close the Board of Zoning Appeals, open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Mike Mattson. I'm at 101 Church Street, Smyrna. This is my wife, Mary Kay. We're both owners of Illusion Meats. And we feel that Smyrna will be a great opportunity for us and the town to open, and especially with an opportunity to open near Brandon. We think it would do a lot of good.
So we vote yes.
If it was only that easy, right? Well, I'm going to be honest, I enjoyed your packet. I read through that. I probably know more about bead now than I ever thought I would, but I really appreciate the information. It gave me a much better understanding of the differences and what a winery versus mead versus beer is, and kind of how the process works a little bit. So I appreciate that. If you don't mind, and we don't really need this, but the section in there that I thought was very helpful for me, and most people don't mind doing this. Can you tell us a little bit about your credentials? I thought that paragraph was very interesting.
Well, most of our credentials is home brewing. We haven't done anything professional yet, but we've been making mead for like almost 5 years now. We've entered competitions, local, national and international. We've done pretty good with those. We've gotten a good feedback from the community.
Glen Mansion. Oakland Mansion.
Yeah, we did a serving, we were invited to Oakland's Mansion in Murfreesboro, and it was our Oktoberfest, so we had a tent set up, and we introduced, Rutherford County to Meade, which it was, the feedback was just phenomenal, it was totally unexpected, and we think we'll do great here.
Yeah, great. I thought a couple of the best of shows and placings were nice, and then one of the other reports, one of the other facts he provided was that there's only 2 other mead, are they distilleries? What are they called?
Meaderies.
Meaderies, okay, in the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Smyrna would be the 3rd potentially.
One
So,
is in Clarksville and one is in Nashville.
yeah, so
currently.
very, very interesting facts. It sounds like it's which you kind of mentioned, it's kind of an up and coming, kind of like the beer breweries did, 7-10 years ago. I guess this is kind of where meaderies are just now kind of getting going.
Yeah.
So looking forward to it. Any comments or questions for Mike? No? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else that would like to speak for or against? Not seeing anyone, we will close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals for discussion.
I think it looks pretty clear cut, so I will just go ahead and make a motion to approve based on staff findings.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Special exception number 2. We now have 2 microbrewery exceptions under our belt, so congratulations. Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda, we have another special exception, and I can't get back there. It is Mark Stoner for Courier Place.
Yeah. The applicant is requesting a special exception to allow a contract construction service use within a light industrial district at 1086 Courier Place. Property is zoned I-1 and is approximately 0.91 acres in size. Ashbuster's Chimney Service has been in operation at this location since 2009. They are interested in starting a new company called Airbuster Service HVAC, which would operate at the same location as their existing Ashbuster's Chimney Service. The company would utilize 2 service trucks and serve local areas in and around Smyrna as well. Section 7.060B of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for authorizing special exceptions, and they are detailed below. A conditional use permit shall be provided. The board finds that it is A, so designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. The staff finds that the proposed use of a contract construction service will not negatively affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public, will not adversely affect other property in the area. Staff finds that the proposed use would not adversely affect other properties. As within provisions of special exceptions, section 5.053.1C lists contract construction services as special exception within the I-1 district. Conforms to all applicable provisions of the ordinance for the district in which it is to be located, as well as provisions cited in section 7.060 and 7.061, and is necessary for public convenience in the location planned. Staff finds that the site may be able to conform to all provisions of the municipal zoning ordinance as listed in criteria review section 7.060C. Ingress and egress to the property, proposed structures thereon with particular reference to automotive and pedestrian safety and convenience, traffic flow and control in case of access in case of fire or catastrophe. Access to the site would utilize the existing ingress and egress off Courier Place. Off-street parking. Staff finds that the lot provides sufficient space for parking as the operation of the company will utilize only 2 vehicles. Refuse and service areas. Refuse collection will proceed in the same manner as currently. Utilities. This location has all the necessary utilities available on site as the existing business is operational. Screening and buffering would not be applicable in this case. Signs. Staff finds that the proposed use will fit compatibility with the properties in the same district with the above effects. And the applicant will be required to meet the sign ordinance for any proposed signage as well. Required yard and open space. Staff finds that there is adequate space on this lot to support HVAC service company in addition to the other uses present. General compatibility with adjacent properties. Staff finds that the proposed use may be compatible with adjacent properties as there are other commercial uses present at this site and in surrounding buildings as well. Number 9 is not applicable in this case. And staff finds that there's adequate space at the requested location for their business, as well as fitting in with the surrounding business uses. This is the existing building that they are currently in operation out of at this time. And then there's an overhead view of it. You got Almaville, and then Kruger comes off of Almaville south of 24. Couple industrial tracks back here, and this is the one that they're in operation out of currently. That's all I got.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Mitch. Any comments or questions for Mitch before? All right, we'll close the Board of Zoning Appeals, open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. Not seeing anyone, we will close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mitch, only question I have, I know that there's been a few, I'm specifically thinking of the industrial facility on Weekly Lane where we've had some calls and complaints about vehicles and parking. Have we had any kind of calls like that at this location? I'm not sure of any.
Best of my personal knowledge, I haven't had any.
Okay. So, and he's only adding 2 additional trucks. It looks like from the drawing, there's plenty of room for them. That would be my only concern. If we haven't had any problems already, I think they'll manage it fine. There's already essentially a business in this facility doing similar type customer-facing work where they go out and perform services. So, any comments, questions, or a motion?
It appears to be in order. Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the special exception.
All right, we have a motion to approve Air Busters in the Ash Busters location.
All in one building.
Yeah.
For clarification, would that be with staff comments?
With staff comments.
All right, any second?
I'll second.
I've got 2 seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Special exceptions approved. All right, now our last item on the agenda tonight is for, I think it's John, is it Mauer? Mauer? I got close, right? I just know John. Yeah. You've got a special, a request for zoning variance for a detached or attached garage.
Attached garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, the applicant's requesting a zoning variance to place an attached garage within their front yard setback. To go along with that zoning variance, they are also requesting a front setback variance. The applicant's requesting a 23-foot front setback variance off of Snowbird Drive. Property is zoned R3 and a little over 13,000 square feet in size. Minimum front yard setback requirement in the R3 zone is 35 feet. Property has 2 front setbacks. Applicant is proposing a front setback variance of 23 feet along Snowbird Drive, which would allow for a 12-foot setback. As proposed, the structure will be positioned approximately 25.5 foot off of the edge of the pavement on Snowbird Drive. The proposed garage is to be roughly 28 by 30 foot in size and connected to the home via a breezeway. The property has a 10-foot PUDE drainage easement along the rear property line that would not be affected by the structure placement. There is an existing fence which does enclose the rear yard as well already. Section 7.080D of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for variances not involving special flood hazard areas, and they are detailed below. Zoning variance requirements, section 7.080 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for a zoning variance request. And those requirements and staff findings are as follows. The board shall not grant a variance unless it makes findings based upon evidence presented as it follows. The particular physical surroundings, shape, topographic conditions of the specific property involved that would result in a particular hardship upon the owner as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the application of the ordinance were carried out must be stated. Staff finds that the property does have 2 front setbacks, which must be met by the owner under the zoning ordinance of 35 foot for any structures attached to the house. The conditions upon which a petition for a variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same district. Due to the property having 2 front setbacks, the front setbacks would affect the location of a garage placed within the front yard that does constrict the building envelope on this property. The variance will not authorize activities in a zone district other than those permitted by the ordinance. Attached structures are allowed by right in the R3 district, but are to adhere to all applicable setbacks. Financial returns shall not be considered as a basis for granting the variance. The property owner has not identified financial returns as a reason for this request. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property after the effective date of this ordinance. The creation and size of the lot and the house were not completed by the applicant. That granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. Staff finds that the variance request will not provide the applicant with any special privileges denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in R3 district due to the hardship of 2 front setbacks for this property. The variance is the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Staff finds that the requested setback variance may be the minimum to make reasonable use of the structure for the proposed use. The granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. Staff finds that the variance should not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. The proposed variance will not impair adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent property, substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, increase danger of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. Staff finds that the variance would not have any of the above effects. And number 10 is not applicable in this case. In conclusion, staff finds that the property does have 2 front setbacks in which an attached structure must meet. Having a second front setback located on the side yard creates a more constricted building envelope than on normal lots with 1 front setback. 2 variances are being requested in this instance: a zoning variance to locate an attached garage on a front setback and a front setback variance of 23 foot on Snowbird Drive. And in addition, just a reminder, if the board does choose to approve this variance, that does not prohibit the applicant from adhering to other, whether HOA restrictions or covenant restrictions that the subdivision may have. It's just the town's requirements to come before you. So if any of those are applicable, the applicant would be required to meet those as well.
Understood.
This is the corner looking at the house. And then this is that easement that's in the back of the property I mentioned earlier. So the fence would contain that entire structure that the applicant's proposing to be building. This is an overhead view. This is Snowbird Drive, so this is that side that the setback variance is being requested off of. So based on the dimensions provided, this is a rough location of where that structure would be located. The applicant does have sufficient space in the back if they choose to move it back. I believe it's about 5 foot they can play with to move it back off the house if they so choose to, but based on the application submitted, that's a rough location as far as where they wanted it submitted.
Okay. What's the lot size, do you know?
13,600 square feet.
So is that half acre or less?
No, it's less. Half acre is about 20,000-ish.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments for Mitch?
I think you're referring to the maximum allowable.
Yeah, I was gonna
square
talk
footage on
about that in a second, but we'll get to that. That's the only thing that I saw that kinda jumped out at me, so.
So it is attached to the house via breezeway, so we
it
don't have
doesn't
those
apply.
requirements.
Gotcha,
Correct.
Okay.
perfect. So we'll just wanna make sure John realizes that going forward, but,
We're good.
okay. Any other comments, questions? Perfect. All right, we'll close the Board of Zoning Appeals and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. You don't have to, it's up to you.
I guess I'd speak for it.
All right.
I'd like to have a garage.
So please state your name and your address for the
I'm
record.
John Mauer. I'm one of the owners of Transmission Masters in Laverne, address 11015 Nevada Avenue. I'd asked my builder to look into building me a garage. I recently downsized from about a 5,000 square foot house to about a 1,300 square feet house, so need a little garage space to
Yeah.
park some of my stuff. My boat, I like to keep inside. A couple of cars, but, and he informed me that I needed to apply for this variance to possibly build one. That's why we're here.
Yep, perfect. So the point that we were discussing, just to make sure you understand, there's 2 points we want to make sure you're aware of. Is one, there previously, I believe, was covenants that may or may not have been expired for your neighborhood. Don't know, but our approval or whatever we give you here doesn't mean you don't still have to meet by any of those covenants. So
Correct.
just make sure you do your homework and that you're meeting those covenants as well. And then the second piece is, we were talking about the size. Normally in a half acre tract or less, you're limited to 600 square feet, but because yours is attached, that limitation doesn't apply.
Okay.
So as Mitch mentioned, if you decided to move it back away from the house and detach it, you would be required to have a smaller size.
I
So,
see. Okay.
600 square feet is the maximum for half acre or less.
I believe that's why we decided to attach it.
Yeah.
Right.
I recently built one and I had to stay in that 600 because I couldn't find a way to attach it. So I had the same problem. That's why I'm so familiar with it. But anyway, that's the 2 points we were trying to make. Want to make sure you understand. Generally, the 2 front sides, how will you be getting in? Will the doors be on
The gate going into my backyard is right next to the house. There's a
Okay,
fence
so
between.
they'll come in
between
off
the
your
house.
existing driveway essentially?
Exactly,
I got you.
Exactly.
Expand the driveway to the back.
right.
Yeah.
Bring it
Okay.
around.
Fence will stay where it's at.
Right, not moving the fence or the gate.
Perfect. Any other questions for John? For those of you that don't know, John's done some work on my cars, my Monte Carlo specifically, and it's got a really nice Corvette, by the way. But,
It's gonna go in that garage.
yeah, it's probably gonna go in that garage. He might not have wanted me to
That's where
mention
it'll
that. So anyway, all right, thank you, John, appreciate it. Any other questions for, no? All right, we'll close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals for discussion. One thing that I'll bring up is obviously, we've seen these type of requests with 2 front setbacks regularly. This is generally related to a swimming pool or a garage or a building, so it's pretty consistent. Obviously, with the 2 setbacks and a corner yard, builders tend to push that home kind of back into the corner as much as they can, and they give you a large front yard on both sides. But unfortunately, that means you have nowhere to put anything after they do that. So that's kind of what we've seen in the past, and to be consistent, I'm not aware of any time that we've not approved these type of requests when they've been reasonable, like this one is. So any comments or questions about the request?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to approve the zoning variance to locate the attached garage in the front setback and the front setback variance of 23 foot on Snowbird Drive due to a hardship of 2 front setbacks, to include staff comments.
Hey, he got you that time, right? All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve with a second. All those in favor of both variance requests in this matter, setback and, I guess the garage in the front setback and the setback variance, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No one's opposed. Variance has been approved. Sorry, I got lost in my notes there. All right, Mitch, I think that was the last item on our agenda. Staff comments or other business?
I'm good to go.
I think we have a couple of members that have been re-upped for another 3-year term. Is that right? 3 years, I think that's right. So Jay and Phil? Yeah, so thank you guys for applying and considering your time. This is probably the longest we've had this board intact in a long time, at least while I've been on it. So I appreciate you guys' service and appreciate you willing to help out.
Thank you.
All right, there's no other comments. We will adjourn. Thank you.